Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the person you've been your entire life was never actually you, not the career, not the personality, not the identity you built, just a mask you learned to wear. And when that mask falls off, most people think something has gone terribly wrong. But according to Carl Jung, that moment isn't the beginning of a crisis. It's the beginning of becoming who you were always meant to be. And if you're experiencing the confusion, loneliness, and identity collapse that follows awakening, there's a reason for it. So, in this video, we're going to uncover the hidden psychological process Jung spent 40 years studying, the one almost nobody explains when they talk about spiritual awakening. Nobody tells you that the worst part of waking up isn't the pain of seeing through the illusion. It's the morning after when you open your eyes and realize you have no idea who's looking back at you in the mirror. If you've been through a spiritual awakening or experienced what many call ego death, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That strange, dislocating feeling of having the entire foundation of your identity pulled out from under you, while the rest of the world keeps moving as if nothing happened. The life you built, the personality you wore, the goals you chased, all of it suddenly feels like it belonged to someone who no longer exists, and you're left standing in an open field with no map and no compass. Carl Jung studied this exact moment for over 40 years, and what he found will reframe everything you're going through right now. He didn't see this collapse as a crisis. He saw it as a death that had to happen, a psychological clearing that makes room for what he called individuation. The process of becoming the person you were before the world got its hands on you. But most people completely misread what's happening to them at this stage, and that misunderstanding is exactly what keeps them stuck for years after their awakening. Because here's what no one explains clearly enough. Waking music up is not the same as arriving. You haven't found yourself. You've only burned down the disguise, and everything that comes next depends on whether you understand the difference. There's a reason you feel worse after awakening than you did before, and it's not because something went wrong. It's because for the first time in your life, you're experiencing reality without a buffer. Every ambition that used to drive you, music, every social role that gave you a sense of belonging, every belief that made the world feel orderly and safe, none of it holds weight anymore. And that absence creates a kind of vertigo that most people are completely unprepared for. You watch the people around you living inside the same structures music you just stepped out of, and you feel a loneliness that's hard to put into words because it's not about being physically alone. It's about seeing from a place that no one around you seems to share. Jung understood this because he lived through it himself. His own psyche broke open and left him navigating the same groundlessness you're in right now. He recognized that the ego, the identity you've been operating from your whole life, music was never the real you. It was a survival mechanism assembled from childhood conditioning, cultural expectations, and the need to be music accepted. And when it collapses, you're not left empty. You're left exposed to a fullness you were never taught how to hold. That grief you're carrying isn't for the person you lost. It's for the years you spent locked inside a version of yourself that was never big enough to contain you. And the raw confusion you feel right now is actually the most honest state you've been in for as long as you can remember, because nothing is being filtered anymore. But there's a trap music at this stage that almost everyone falls into, and if you don't catch it early, it will pull you right back into the prison you just escaped from. The most dangerous thing you can do after ego death is rush to fill the emptiness with a new identity before you've understood what the old one was hiding. And this is where the majority of people go wrong. They trade the corporate persona for a spiritual persona. They replace old labels with new ones. They start calling themselves awakened or conscious and build an entire self-image around the experience of having woken up. A specific warning about this, and it's one of the most overlooked ideas in his entire body of work. So that's it. If you construct a new mask to replace the one that fell, you haven't grown. You've just redecorated your prison. The goal was never to find a better costume. The goal is to learn how to exist without one, and that means sitting with the most uncomfortable thing a human being can face, the unfiltered truth of who you are beneath every performance. Jung called this shadow work music, and he considered it the most critical task in the entire process of individuation. Your shadow is everything you've been running from since childhood. The anger you were told was unacceptable, the sadness you learned to swallow, the desires you buried because they didn't match the person you were supposed to be. After awakening, the shadow doesn't wait for an invitation. It rushes in like water through a cracked dam because music, the structure that was holding it back, no longer exists. And the people who try to meditate it away or rise above it with positive thinking are the same people who find themselves 3 years later still feeling fractured, still wondering why the awakening that was supposed to set them free left them more confused than before. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. That's not a slogan, that's the entire mechanism. And there's something else that happens during shadow work that nobody prepares you for. The people in your life start to shift. Fall. Relationships you thought were solid begin to feel uncomfortable not because those people changed music, but because you did. When you stop performing, the connections that were built on your performance lose their foundation. You start noticing that some of the people closest to you were never actually close to the real you. They were close to the mask, and now that the mask is gone, there's an unfamiliar distance between you that no amount of effort seems to close. I know this is painful, but it's also one of the clearest signs that the process is working, because individuation doesn't just rearrange your inner world, it reorganizes your outer world to match. But the shadow isn't the only buried force that surfaces after ego death. There's another one, and Jung considered it just as essential to the process of becoming whole. He called it the anima music in men and the animus in women, and it represents the contrasexual energy that every person carries within them, but has been music taught to suppress. This isn't about gender in the biological sense. It's about psychological balance, about the fact that you contain both masculine and feminine forces within your psyche, and the one you've been rejecting holds exactly the qualities you need most right now. If you're a man who is raised to be logical, controlled, and emotionally self-sufficient, your anima carries everything you cut off: your intuition, your emotional depth, music, your capacity for vulnerability, and creative surrender. If you're a woman who is conditioned to be agreeable, nurturing, and accommodating, your animus holds your assertiveness, your intellectual music authority, your ability to take space without apology. And you've probably already felt this pulling at music you without having a name for it. That restless sense that some part of you is starving, no matter how much you feed the parts the world approves of. Jung saw that after awakening, these rejected energies start demanding expression music, and if you don't meet them consciously, they come out sideways as irrational mood swings, as projection music onto romantic partners, as an inner hunger that no external change seems to satisfy. Music. This is also why so many people cycle through relationship after their awakening. Music each time, believing they found the person who completes them, only to hit music the same wall again. Jung would tell you bluntly, you are not looking for a partner. You are looking for the part of yourself you never allowed to exist. The passion music you feel for someone who seems to embody everything you lack is your own psyche trying to show you what it needs you to integrate. Music, and until you do that work internally, you will keep outsourcing your wholeness to other people who were never meant to carry it for you. The integration of your anima, or animus music, is one of the most transformative things that can happen during individuation, because it makes you stop looking for your missing half in other people. Music, and start recognizing that it was inside you the entire time. When a man learns to listen to his anima, he gains access to a depth of feeling and relational intelligence that transforms every connection in his life. When a woman integrates her animus, she steps into a clarity of direction and inner authority that no longer needs external permission. That transformation. Well, I'm adamant about this. Music you cannot fully know yourself while half of your psyche remains in exile. There is a form of knowing that Jung pointed toward again and again in his work, one that modern psychology is only now beginning to take seriously, and it doesn't live in your head. It lives in your body. After ego death, when the mental frameworks that used to run your life have dissolved, you're left without the thinking mind's usual authority, and that terrifies most people because they've been taught that intelligence is a function of the brain alone. But your body has been processing reality, storing memory, and registering truth far longer than your conscious mind has been narrating it. And learning to listen to it is not a spiritual luxury. Music it is the most practical thing you can do to navigate the rebuilding of your life. Think about the times you overrode a gut feeling and regretted it. The relationship your body told you to leave months before your mind caught up. The opportunity that looked perfect on paper, but made your chest tighten every time you thought about it. The decision you rationalized your way into while something in your stomach was screaming, no, that wasn't anxiety, and it wasn't irrationality. That was a deeper intelligence trying to communicate with you through the only language it has, the language of sensation, tension, music expansion, and contraction. Jung understood that the unconscious doesn't only speak through dreams and symbols, it speaks through the body itself. And after awakening, this channel becomes louder than ever, music because the ego's constant mental chatter is no longer drowning it out. Your body knows when you're betraying yourself before your mind has even formed the thought. It knows when a person is safe and when they aren't. Music when an environment is draining you and when it's feeding you. When you're moving toward wholeness, music, and when you're sliding back into an old pattern. The tightness in your throat when you swallow words you needed to say. The heaviness in your chest when you agree to something that violates your truth. The sudden aliveness you feel when you stumble onto something that genuinely matters to you. None of that is noise. It is yourself communicating through flesh and nerve. And the more you honor it, music, the more accurately it guides you. Learning to pause before every major decision, music, and ask your body what it already knows is not weakness or indecision. It is the most ancient form of intelligence available to you. And it has been waiting your entire life for you, music, to stop overriding it. And this body level knowing is directly connected to the question that haunts almost everyone after awakening. What am I supposed to do with my life now? You've lost the old ambitions. The old motivations feel hollow, and the goals that once drove you forward now feel like they belong to someone else's story. The mistake most people make is trying to think their way into a new purpose. Sitting down with a journal and attempting to logic their way toward meaning the same way they used to logic their way through a career plan. But purpose after ego death doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the body, from paying attention to what makes you feel expanded versus contracted, alive versus numb, pulled forward versus dragged along. Jung believed that your purpose is not something you invent. It is something you uncover by listening to the parts of yourself that were never allowed to speak. It lives in the recurring themes of your life, in the suffering you've metabolized that now gives you an understanding most people don't have. In the moments when time disappears, music, because you're doing something that aligns with a truth deeper than preference or ambition. Your body already knows what this is. Your nervous system lights up around it. The challenge is that the mind, still trying to regain its old authority, will keep dismissing these signals as impractical or unrealistic, and you have to learn to override that dismissal the same way you once overrode your intuition. Your intuition. Except now, in the opposite direction. The final truth about individuation is that it doesn't have a finish line, and that's not a limitation. That's the freedom. You will never reach a permanent state of enlightenment, where all the work is done and the answers are final. And the moment you stop expecting that is the moment you actually start living this music instead of chasing it. Jung was still uncovering new layers of himself in his 80s, still being surprised by what his unconscious brought forward. And he saw that as evidence of a life fully engaged rather than a process left incomplete. What transforms is not the presence of struggle, music, but your relationship to it. Where you once ran from uncertainty, you begin treating it as the space where real becoming takes place. Where you once needed a fixed identity to feel secure, you start holding who you are with open hands. Music understanding that the need to be defined is just the ego music trying to regain control. Your relationships change because you're no longer performing a role music or seeking your missing half in someone else. You show up as a whole person carrying both your masculine and feminine energies, music, your light and your shadow, your thinking mind and your body's knowing. And that wholeness is what allows you to truly meet another human being instead of just using them to fill a gap. Your work shifts because it starts coming from alignment rather than desperation, from a felt sense of rightness music rather than the need to prove your worth. And the emptiness that followed your awakening, that hollowed out silence that made you question whether you'd ever feel at home in yourself again. Music gets replaced not by constant happiness, because that was always the ego's music promise, but by coherence. A steady, grounded sense that your mind, your body, your conscious intentions, and your unconscious depths are finally pulling in the same direction. And this is the part most people will resist hearing. That coherence isn't given to you. Nobody is coming to hand it to you after you've suffered enough. It is built music brick by brick every single time you choose honesty over comfort and presence over performance. Jung's deepest message was never complicated. You were not built music to remain the person your conditioning designed. The death of that false self was never a punishment. It was the only door that leads to the life music you actually came here to live. So stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting to feel ready. The person you're becoming doesn't need you to be ready. They need you to begin. Now, music, let me ask you something that might land harder than you expect. What would you do differently tomorrow, music, if you stopped waiting for permission to be who you actually are? Not the spiritual version, not the acceptable version. Music, not the version that makes everyone around you comfortable. The real one. The one your body already knows how to be. Write it in the comments, even if it scares you. Because putting it into words, music, is the moment it stops being a fantasy and starts becoming a direction. And if you felt something shift while watching this, subscribe to Fractal Wisdom and stay music close. This channel exists for people who are done performing and ready to start music living. And what's coming next is going to push you even further into that truth. And this is the truth most people never hear. Awakening doesn't give you a finished version of yourself. It gives you the responsibility to build one, not based on fear, not based on approval, but based on the deepest truth inside you. Carl Jung believed that the greatest privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. And the moment your old identity collapsed, that process officially began. So if you're standing in that strange space right now, between the person you were and the person you're becoming, understand something. You're not lost. You're in the most important phase of your life, the phase where the mask falls and the real self begins to emerge. Now I want to hear from you. What part of your old identity are you finally ready to let go of? Write it in the comments below. And if this video helped you understand your awakening on a deeper level, subscribe to Fractal Wisdom, because on this channel, we explore the psychology, philosophy, and hidden truths behind becoming fully yourself. And trust me, the next stage of this journey is even deeper.